Hello, everybody. This is
Hello.
our monthly Ask Dru live. We're going to wait for some of you to join in. I'm just contemplating the fact that I've got a very shiny forehead, and Dru definitely looks like he's in the midst of winter. So neither of us have got this right, have we?
I'm wearing my favourite jumper, which is ever so soft and very, very warm, and just all kinds of loveliness.
My lighting engineer is just sorting out my lighting. By that I mean you see.
Brilliant. For those of you who don't know us, who haven't met us, who think, who are these two random weirdos who've gone live on my Facebook? My name's Dru. I'm one of the co-founders of Club Soda. I'm the author of How to Be a Mindful Drinker, and I developed and lead all of Club Soda's courses for people who want to change their drinking. You always have it on hand as a prop, and I never do. If you're interested in, if you're just at the beginning thinking about how you might want to change your drinking, we've got a free course called How to Change Your Drinking, and then we've got two courses, kind of longer intensive courses, one called How to Drink Mindfully, one called How to Stop Drinking. They do what they say on the tin, right? So there's one which is if you want to explore your drinking habits, think about cutting down, want to pay more attention, How to Drink Mindfully is for you. If you want to take a break, or if you want to stop drinking for now or forever, How to Stop Drinking is for you. But yeah, that's what I do in Club Soda, is that I write and lead all of our courses. I write a weekly Ask Dru article for the website, and then we do these every month. So if you've got questions, anything that you want to ask. Yeah, we have had a comment already.
Just to let you all know that the links for the courses are already in the description for this video, so you can have a little look at those. And we've got a few questions today. So the person who says you're struggling sticking to do day one, we'll actually cover that in our first question around dry January and some of that stuff. So that's excellent.
Laura, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, I do that always. For those who are like me and are already thinking about the next thing to do when they're already on the thing that they should be doing, that's a perfect example of it, where I knew I had to introduce myself, but I was already on to the next thing. Anyway, so I'm Laura. I'm the other co-founder of Club Soda. So I've been, I was there at the start of Club Soda, and Dru's written all of our courses, and I do all the talking-y bits generally. I'm also 8.5 years alcohol free now, and so it'd be interesting to share that journey with some of you through this Ask Dru. Although it's called Ask Dru, I will interject liberally. So there we go. Oh, hi everybody. Oh, everybody's struggling with day one. So I see that was a typo.
Shall we talk about that very specifically?
I think what might be worth doing is people definitely find it difficult to stick to day one, but equally some people, because of the new restrictions, because of events going on in the world, have found that it's been very difficult to even stay on track or keep that intention to do their dry January this month. So where do you even begin to go for that? How do you get through day one, and how do you keep going regardless of what the world throws at you?
Okay, so let's talk about day one first of all, because it's really important. The most essential bit of advice that I can give you about day one is please forget about it as a concept, because it genuinely, if you are struggling with it, it's a sign that it's not helping you. So I want to give you an alternative of something to do instead, which is that to think about those moments in your day when you would normally turn to have a drink. Think about having a drink, and most of us, unless we're the kind of person who's waking up and having a drink from the moment that we wake up and drinking throughout the day, to be honest, I'm going to leave you aside for a moment, because it's a very different kettle of fish. But if you're the kind of person who's getting through the day, maybe you found that wine o'clock is creeping forward in the day, you're opening a bottle at 4 o'clock rather than 6 o'clock like you used to, maybe you're starting at lunchtime. The thing about day one is that it's actually not a 24-hour period. What you're really thinking about is the moment when you would normally have a drink, and then coming up with really solid plans to help you do something different at that moment. And so the problem with the day one attitude is that actually, if we've got into a habit of daily drinking, actually a whole day is really too long a time frame for us to comprehend. And what we end up doing is we wake up in the morning, probably with a hangover from the day before, and our first thought is, I'm not going to drink today. And the moment that you start thinking, I'm not going to drink today, you've already started expending willpower. One of the things to understand about willpower is that it's a finite resource. It won't last you forever. There are better ways of changing, which you discover in our courses. But if you are going to get through day one and your first thought in the morning is, I'm not going to drink today, then you're already drawing on your reserves of willpower from the moment that you wake up. So to be frank, by the time you get to wine o'clock, whether that's 4, 5, 6 p.m., you are already exhausted. You are done with willpower. So here's what to do tomorrow. When you wake up, do not give this subject a second thought. Imagine that this is a day like any other. And then, say about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, at that point, set a reminder in your phone so that you don't forget. Make a plan for what you're going to do at the time when you would normally start drinking. And so there are some very simple things that you can do at that moment. You can find something else to drink, obviously. You can change your routine in some way so that you're not in the same place in your house. I know that we're all kind of stuck indoors right now, but seriously, one of the best ways of avoiding wine o'clock right now is to stick on your boots and a coat and go for a walk around the block. So change your scenery. And change who you're interacting with at that moment. Literally at that moment, that's the time to come onto the Club Soda community on Facebook and start a conversation. It doesn't have to be about drinking. It can be literally about anything. But that's the moment to change what you're drinking, who you're with, and what you're doing. And all of those things, all of those little things will help you get over that particular moment in your day. And having got over that particular moment in your day, what most of us find is our craving for a drink. Our bodies are really well trained. We've done a really good job of kind of teeing ourselves up to need a drink at a particular time of day. We've been training our bodies for years, to be frank. It takes a little while to unlearn those patterns, but cravings don't last forever.
They won't kill you.
And they won't kill you. Half an hour later, you will have moved on. So really, all that you're doing, so this is the plan for tomorrow, right? Tomorrow morning, don't give it a second thought. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, it's a day like any other. And then at the moment that you find a drink, put a plan in place. Find something else to drink, go for a walk around the block, talk to a friend, but do whatever you need to do to get you through that half-hour period. And I promise that will get you going.
I mean, the important part of this is to think about the part of the day which your trigger occurs. And I'm going to come back to this slightly because one of the people in the group is saying that actually they've now started to think about it the minute that they wake up in the morning. Okay. So we'll come back to that in a second. But I sort of wanted to share with everybody because I was the person who didn't think, I'd read all those self-help books and flick through them and go, oh yeah, I understand all of that principle. And then I'd put it down, and surprisingly, my behavior never changed. And that's because I didn't do the work in between the pages. I didn't do the planning. And every self-help book, regardless of what method it is, has an element in where you take some time to reflect about your drinking, learn about those patterns. And for us, that's about thinking about what, where, when, and who you were drinking with. And to understand that in order to help you make a plan. And then actually sitting down and thinking through what you might do instead. And to give you an example, because I'm trying to do the same with sugar at the minute, because I went a bit, my cake eating went a bit out of control before Christmas. So I have an if-then plan, and this is my plan. Oh, wait a minute, it's upside down. Wait a minute, I'm good at this. So if I want something sweet to eat, I'm trying to break that eating something sweet after savoury. So I'm not cutting everything out. But I have a plan now, which is my first thing is I drink a half a pint of water. Then I'll have a cup of tea if I want something sweet to drink. Then I'm going to do 5 minutes of abs, which I have been doing. I'm going to have rock hard abs by the end of the month, I've decided.
I'm not.
Then I'll eat something savoury instead, because actually it's the act of eating. So I've dealt with some very fundamental things. I've dealt with hydration, which is normally something that triggers you to eat. I've dealt with distracting myself by making tea, because I take a long time to make tea because I'm very snobby about my tea. And I've done something else to distract me, which is the 5 minutes of abs. And then I've eaten something, and eating something doesn't have to be sweet. You can make an if-then plan. It might be that you read a chapter of a book, that you could connect with somebody on the group, that you drink an alcohol-free drink instead, that you just drink water. Because trust me, if you've been drinking as long as I had, your body's screaming out for hydration.
You're really dehydrated.
You may need to eat something, because I drank rather than eating food. I need a drink. No, what I needed was food. So put that plan in place, and it does work. And there are people here, and I'm one of them, which are proof and testament that that works.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really key point, Laura, that, it's interesting. You sent me a brilliant article earlier, and we will post it in the group because it's really worth reading, which is about how you need to let go of the idea of pursuing happiness. Now, I have a bit of a problem with that title, because actually, the pursuit of happiness is a really important part of the process of change, particularly if you've been in a place which is very unhappy. But actually, what that article makes is a very fundamental point, that simply wishing isn't enough. Your intentions aren't enough. Manifesting not drinking does not work. The way that you get there is by recognizing the fact that there are obstacles in your way, and then making a plan to overcome them. That's how you actually make change happen. It's not by waking up in the morning and wishing that today is going to be different, because if you just wish that today is going to be different and do nothing about it, today is going to be exactly the same as yesterday.
Sorry, carry on.
No, I was just going to repeat myself.
And that's the same for you if you've started drinking earlier in the day, because of course pandemic has made us lonelier, less connected to people. The only way and the person who's mentioned that has already identified that, look, I'm lonely, and I've got bad thoughts, and so I'm drinking to mask those bad thoughts, and I've got mental health issues. So the only way you're going to deal with that drinking is to begin to plan for some of those other things. So how can you keep yourself connected? Who haven't you spoken to this year? I made a list in January of people that I'd not hardly spoken to in January because of pandemic. And I didn't want to get in the way because everyone's got their stuff going on. And I thought, no, actually, that's not true. 10-minute phone call is nothing at the moment. So I've made a list of people. I'm using January to phone or connect with those people in some way.
Nice.
You are responsible for changing that for yourself, and of course it won't be perfect, you won't be happy immediately, but doing something is definitely better than doing nothing. And the more you do something, the more consistently you do it, and we're not talking about abs here, we're talking about actually other positive things for your mental health, you will succeed. And that's the same with drinking. The more work you put in to change your drinking, it may not go perfect all of the time, but you will get somewhere. I can promise you will get somewhere.
Yeah,
and so that's an important thing to know.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, let's kind of put it out there. It's not going to go right. One of the real challenges, and this is, I guess, I want to speak to people directly who have had an intention to do a dry January, and then a lockdown was announced in the UK, and then American democracy burnt to the ground a couple of days ago, and it has been a really long year so far. Let's be honest about it. If you have, if the pressure of the world and everything else has got to you, and you have given up on giving up this dry January, I'm going to encourage you to do a really, really simple thing, which is to decide to start again. We live with such pressure that we put ourselves under, that we become very all or nothing about dry January, especially. We go with this intention that we're going to stop drinking, and then things don't work out, and then we go, fuck it, I can't do it, I'm going to drink for the rest of January. Who says that's the only option? So this is my challenge. If you are somebody, if you managed 4 days of January, if you managed 6 days of January, 8 days of January, where are we? 10 days of January. If you managed it, but you had a drink today, something happened, something good happened in that time where you were alcohol free. Every health professional is going to tell you that taking regular breaks is good for you. So congratulate yourself. You had 6 days off. now plan another 6 days off. You don't have to wait for January to come round again. You don't have to drink out the rest of the month. You don't have to wait for February to appear. You can do it again now. So that's the challenge, is to go, you know what, it has gone wrong, but this is worthwhile. One of the best ways of motivating to yourself to do that, because our brains are kind of hardwired to focus on the moments of emotional intensity, and those are very often the moments when things have gone wrong. So I want to encourage you to think back over that period where you weren't drinking and to consciously remember how good it felt, and then use that as motivation to get those feelings back.
And for some people, if you've been on this group for a while, you can actually search back your old comments in this group to things that you said at that time. And I have to tell you that everybody who has succeeded in changing their drinking in club soda has done so because they've also failed lots of times and picked themselves back up and dusted themselves down. Each time you learn more to take into your new sprint that will work for you. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say to the member that's been talking about the fact they've got a high paid job and all of this sort of stuff, I had, you know, when I was drinking my most, I had big responsibilities. I'd been given an MBE, right, by the Queen. I can't believe she gave such a lush an MBE. I mean, that's just, I still find it ridiculous to this day that I've managed to get an honour for when I was actually quite a mess. There are many people in here with many high paid jobs. I'm not going to name them, but lots of people. This doesn't mean the rules don't apply to you. None of us are that special. It takes work to sort this out. Some of the biggest people like, Alan Campbell,
Alistair Campbell.
Alistair Campbell, thank you. You know, talks a lot about being a high functioning, high paid over drinker and alcoholic. And so, you know, but ultimately we're not all so special, actually. And if you just speak to other people in this group, you'll find that the things that work for them will work for you. You'll need tweaks, you know. Some people want to drink alcohol-free beer, some people want to run around the block. But the principle of distraction and repetition of that good behavior is fundamental to us all.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to speak directly, actually, to something that somebody's raised about the subject of addiction, because it is really important. And I guess I want to apologise if I've come across as flippant. That's not my intention at all. You know, in Club Soda, we really focus on practical advice and stuff that we know works, and stuff that we know works across a whole spectrum of difficulty that people have with substances. If you are somebody who is physically dependent on alcohol, you need to speak to your doctor before you stop drinking, so you can understand and minimize the risk of alcohol withdrawal symptoms. We've got a survey in How to Change Your Drinking, which helps you understand that risk and gives you advice about what to do if that is the case. If you're somebody who's got a compulsive relationship with alcohol, so if you're the kind of person who is drinking and probably you've got yourself into a state where you're drinking where you're getting no benefit from it at all, right? It's just become a thing that you do to get through the day and survive. Right. We understand that. There are people in this community who have been exactly where you are. And everything that I've said about planning and about all of those things apply to you as well. Right. So there is, of course, a ton of other stuff. You're absolutely right when you talk about the fact that we should, as a country, be spending more on addictions. We should be fixing society so that people don't have to rely on substances to be able to cope. I could not agree with you more. All that I'm saying is that the power to change is ultimately in our hands, and it is about the decisions that we make. One of those decisions might be reaching out to get the support that you need. And if you're not supported right now, then talking to your doctor is a really good first step. They're reaching out to people in this community. If you want to have a conversation with me about sources of support and where you can go to get the help that you need to change, I'm really, really happy to have a conversation with you. But what I'm saying is, you know, whether you join Club Soda because your lockdown drinking got a bit out of hand, or you join Club Soda because you've been struggling with alcohol addiction for years, we are we are all in the same boat. We are all in this together,
Yeah.
and we are all here to support each other. However, we've got to this point that we need to sort out our relationship with alcohol.
And there isn't always an order to things. Sometimes you need to have some time clear from alcohol in order to have space to deal with mental health. It's not always that you need to deal with things at the same time, but for some people they do. So it's not an either or. And for me, certainly, I needed to have got 3 months under my belt of not drinking. And then suddenly I had the space and energy to begin to deal with all the other stuff, which by doing so made that I then carried on being sober, if that makes sense. So,
absolutely.
So yes, while we talk about alcohol as a particular thing at the moment, there are plenty of articles about mental health and the links and what order you might try and do things in. That even includes smoking.
Absolutely.
And what works for you.
I mean, I know for myself that, you know, I have a long history of anxiety and depression. And I know that I went through most of my 30s self-medicating to deal with, you know, actually being on medication from my doctor and also drinking and taking a buttload of drugs. Funnily enough, those two things don't work together particularly well. But, you know, I was using whatever was at my disposal to try and fix those issues, right? I wasn't happy that I was unhappy. I wasn't happy that I was anxious, and I was doing anything that I could possibly do to escape myself. And my 30s were a mess as a result. The thing which has changed for me, Laura, you and I, we have very different journeys. Okay, so you started with drinking as the issue. I'm going to fix that, and then a lot's going to flow out of that. For me, my journey started with saying, I'm going to take my mental well-being seriously. I'm going to learn to be uncomfortable with my sadness. I'm going to learn to live well with my anxiety. I am going to find a way that I can function and support myself and live well. And as I've done that, I have slowly but surely eliminated the need to get drunk or off my face to cope with being me. You know, so it's a complex relationship, you know, between mental health and alcohol. No one is saying it isn't. And there are different approaches. You know, you might start with drinking, you might start with the mental health issues, but my encouragement is start somewhere.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing to note is if you are on medication for mental health, alcohol will be affecting that quite significantly. So just taking some time out to see how much better your medication might work for you is also a useful thing to do. At the end of the day, not drinking isn't going to do you any harm, right? So that's it. There's a question that's come up that is interesting to discuss in January, when most people are quite focused on taking a month off. But there's somebody here who's been alcohol-free for a year, but would love to drink within reason again, and know what their triggers are. But everything points there's no such thing as moderation, and why would you want to? It comes up a lot, I know, because people are it's an interesting thing, because once people are alcohol free, they can be very protective of it and want to save you from any future pain by layering that on you. So what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so I have many thoughts on this, as you know. So
will my thoughts contradict your thoughts?
No, actually, I think we probably have come to the same conclusion, but we come to it from slightly different angles. So to be clear, Laura's somebody who has been completely alcohol-free for 8.5 years. I still drink occasionally. When I say occasionally, if your idea of drinking occasionally is 3 nights a week, that's not me. My occasionally is 5 times a year. Right, so I drink very, very occasionally, and I guess I'm in a class of people who moderate, but broadly speaking, actually my life is alcohol-free most of the time.
I would say, and we need to find a word for you and UC, which is you're alcohol-free by default. But you occasionally, your default is alcohol-free, but you occasionally drink.
Yeah, that is my position. You know, my default, I don't regularly buy alcohol. I don't find opportunities to drink. It's not part of my regular routine. It does happen occasionally, and I let's not go into that particularly, but you know, there are times where I consciously choose to have a drink. So one of the things which I guess I'd want to ask, if you've been alcohol free for a year, and if you're thinking about moderating, is I would really challenge you to think about why. What is it that you think that a moderate consumption of alcohol will give you that your current life doesn't? So it seems like a very obvious thing to say, but I think it's worth saying that when we drink, obviously alcohol has an effect on us, right? It relaxes us, it disinhibits us, it does a whole load of other stuff behind the scenes, which is not brilliant for us, but it has an effect on us. So let's be clear that that happens. But all of us, when we drink for something other than alcohol as well. We drink because we want to relax. We drink because we want a sense of connection with others. We drink because we want to forget. We drink because for a whole load of different reasons. There's a reason that we include alcohol in our routine. And I guess when you're thinking about if you've been alcohol free for a long period of time, I guess it's really important to ask yourself what you're missing. Are you missing a sense of relaxation? Are you missing a sense of connection with others? Are you missing a sense of, over forgetting yourself? Whatever it is, we need to say that although alcohol can give you all of those things, there is nothing, literally nothing, that alcohol gives you that you can't achieve another way. If you want a sense of connection, if you want a sense of relaxation, if you want to forget yourself, there are ways to achieve that without alcohol. So I'm going to challenge you to think really hard about what it is that you feel that you're missing right now. And then once you've identified things, to think of all of the ways that you can achieve that state that you're looking for without drinking. Because ultimately, whether you drink or you don't drink is entirely up to you. In Club Soda, we are agnostic on the subject of going alcohol free or moderating. What works is what works for you. But I'm always going to encourage you to give yourself the maximum range of choices that are available to you. And so, whether you want to relax, don't let alcohol be the only way that ever happens for you. Find other ways, other routines, other rituals, other practices that help you reach that state, because ultimately that's about giving you more choices and more flexibility,
and
so
more
you
control.
don't have to, and more control, so you don't have to rely on alcohol as your go-to.
And I'll just add into that, which is I've got a few things to say, which is that your impact of alcohol on you is cumulative. And so I was drinking for, over 20 years, and the impact on my brain was massive. And it wasn't until year 3 that I realized I had a really highly emotional situation. And my first thought didn't go to alcohol and how I shouldn't have any. It went, it just didn't even feature in my response. That's when I knew that the neurological pathways had really changed. And actually, Jen, who used to work for us, she was somebody who gave up for 3 years and then has slowly introduced alcohol back into her diet, but with some very strict rules. The other thing I would say is, particularly for people maybe not like you, who've got a year alcohol free under your belt, but who are currently in the, shall I moderate, shall I go alcohol free? Often we want to moderate because we don't believe we can go out on a Friday or Saturday night with other people. Obviously, that's not an issue right now, but generally we don't believe we can go out on a Friday, Saturday night with other people and not drink. Yeah. And of course, you can't learn to moderate unless you learn to do Friday and Saturday night out with people to not drink. Yeah. So you really need to understand what it's a bit like me always wanting sweet after savoury in lunch. I can't, I need to unpick that hard wine that says, in these occasions, I have to have this. Yeah. So until you really feel you've got control of that situation, I wouldn't suggest going there. Now, I know there are 2 reasons why I don't want to drink again. One is I like the life that I have far more than the life that I had. I'm not willing to give that up for anybody. Yep. I would lose so much. Drew has never met me when I was drinking. I don't want him to see or meet that person, right? So that's the first thing. And for me, as always in Club Soda, what we pick up on the book and all those things is, what's the life you want to lead? And does alcohol really help you do that? Because that's a real big question to ask. The second reason why I don't drink is because I still look at people who leave half a glass of wine in a restaurant and without thinking about it. I'm like, how do they do that? How did I do? I know I still couldn't do that, right? I would still feel I have to finish the whole thing, which I obviously do with dessert, right? So there's clearly something inbuilt in me that I feel that it's a waste to not drink the thing. But I look at that and I think, nah, that's not for me. I don't want to give up what I have gained. And I do have to tell you, 8.5 years on, alcohol is still being alcohol free is still giving to me in terms of my personal development, my connections with other people, the person that I want to be, the life that I want to live. And so I wouldn't be able to do half the things I'm doing now if I'd reintroduced alcohol back into my diet. So I guess I come from the standpoint that, of course, moderation is possible, but alcohol free has worked for me the best. And so I would, that's what I would tell you from my perspective.
Yeah. Good advice.
There we are. Okay, so there's another question, and actually fits in nicely to somebody asking about alcohol-free drinks, which is some people are now really bored because drinking alcohol takes up a huge amount of time. And I remember when I first gave up drinking, I suddenly had acres of time because I wasn't continually hungover, so I was far more energetic in the daytime. And then I suddenly had these evenings where my focus wasn't anymore opening a bottle of wine and just drinking it in front of the telly or whatever. I did everything. I took up sewing and all sorts of bits and pieces, but it's actually quite difficult to know what to do instead. So what do we do instead?
Well, where I want to start this conversation is by saying it's okay to be bored.
Really?
Really. We live in a culture where we are hyperstimulated all of the time, and very often, some of our discomfort about boredom is actually about discomfort about spending time in our own company. We don't particularly like the thoughts that we have in our head and the feelings that we have, and we are determined to entertain ourselves to death, to be frank. And so I think there's a lot to be gained by allowing yourself to be bored, to allow yourself to sit with the experience of just being with yourself with nothing to do. It's really challenging, I know.
Could I just add on to that? Because really important to me when I first gave up was learning the difference between being alone and lonely. I used to think I was lonely, but actually I just not got used to being alone, and I've learned to love being alone. And I'm not lonely. There's lots of people around in the world that I connect with, but I've learned to be alone, which is your point about being bored and happy in your own space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think whatever else you do, it is, to be frank, right? If you're an emotional drinker, if your drinking has been driven by the need to push away and minimize difficult and unpleasant feelings, being alcohol free is actually going to feel pretty uncomfortable, because all of those feelings which you've been pushing away are going to come back. And I recognize the challenge of living with those, and we'll talk a little bit about your list because it's brilliant. Some of the distractions that we have, are ways of coping with ourselves. But one of the other ways of coping with our emotional difficulty and our and thoughts is actually to learn to observe them and not become attached to them. We describe ourselves as a mindful drinking movement, and actually, if you sign up to How to Stop Drinking, it introduces a specific mindfulness technique that you can use to help you manage thoughts and feelings. It's called the breathing space, and it's a really simple approach to just observing, noticing, and letting those thoughts and feelings go, understanding that your thoughts and feelings are things that you experience. They're not things that define you. So there's a lot that we can do. We will talk about your distractions list, and that can be a brilliant coping mechanism. But there's actually a lot that we can do by paying attention to our discomfort, by noticing our intrusive thoughts, by learning to become comfortable with difficult feelings, and not being attached to them. Of course, it takes practice. All of this stuff takes practice. But yeah, I would have said, I think a couple of years ago, I would have leapt to distraction as the way to deal with it.
Well,
but actually, I think I'm coming to see that actually paying attention to these things can really, really help us as well.
I wouldn't say these are distractions like the distractions you need when you've got a craving that strikes, but suddenly what do you begin to do with your time? Just in the same way as how do you begin to make friends? So our blog on Monday is about how to make friends. And of course, suddenly you realize that you have to find new ways to make friends, because you're not just tripping up to the pub and using alcohol-fueled bravado to make new friends. So somebody brought this up the other day, and I think it's really useful to make a list of those things that you used to enjoy, that made you, that you used to enjoy doing when you were younger, that you'd wish you'd do as an adult if you had more time. Those odd jobs around the house that you'd wanted to do, and all those sorts of things. So I did a list the other day because somebody asked about this. So I've got some things that I want to do for my mental health, and I've got some art things that have been on my list for bloody ages. And I've got some stuff around keeping connections, because obviously we're in a pandemic, and some very practical things. So my running technique and cooking with grains and sorting out my duvets. That's been on my list for about 5 years. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a live of me sorting out the duvets. That's it. I've got some stuff around relationship and intimacy here, which is important to me. A little bit more wanking is on my list for this year. Also very good for the endorphins, the dopamine hit. Far better than alcohol. So actually I'm not short of things to do, and if I could keep going on this list. So begin to make that list and begin to do some of it. You don't have to suddenly become an expert concert pianist or bring out your own cookbook. These are things that you're doing for you for enjoyment.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I actually tend to now struggle at the other end of the spectrum, which is really, I find that I load myself with expectations of all of the things which I'm going to do in my spare time. And then I have to, I actually have this conversation with myself today to go, all right, you work, you've got you cook dinner every night, you're tired, you're living in a pandemic, you need to be realistic about the fact that the novel probably isn't going to get written this month. If you're going to do anything, rest instead. So I have kind of the opposite problem. It's not that I tend to have 1,000,000,001 things that I could possibly do. And so my challenge is always learning to not do things, learning to stop, learning to be comfortable in silence, learning just to sit, and not be a manic flood of activity constantly.
Cool. Somebody's asked about sugar. I'm not going to answer that now, but let people know that in our next 2 podcasts will actually have sugar discussed within them, because they're both about nutrition and sugar and changing drinking. And then I've just got one more question which comes up all the time, so I'm going to do a very quick answer to it, which is about evidence around alcohol alternatives leading to or preventing relapse. First of all, it's worth saying that whilst alcohol-free drinks are very big now and they've got the word alcohol-free on them, it's worth remembering that they are just drinks. They are mostly water. And what they are flavoured in ways or made in ways to taste like an adult drink that we recognise, rather than a children's soda. Most crucially is they're not full of sugar. Now, sugar actually does hit your dopamine levels, which people talk about. So actually, they are far healthier than downing a litre of Fanta in the evening if you're giving up drinking. Now, what we do know is they will not make you want to drink. They will not turn you into an alcoholic or make you want to drink more, unless they're a trigger drink for you. And for some people it is. So, for example, if you drink an alcohol-free beer and that taste of beer makes you want alcoholic beer, then definitely leave it out. I never drank beer, so alcohol-free beer has only ever been an alcohol-free product for me. So that's worth knowing. And it's okay, just because you're drinking them in the evening when you used to drink alcohol, you cannot become addicted to them. There's nothing in them that's addictive. They are just drinks. And if that's what you're drinking in the evening instead of a fizzy drink, then it's absolutely fine. In fact, probably even slightly better for you. We're actually doing some research right now about how they're helping people change their drinking habits. But all of the research we've done to date shows that they are really helpful. And it's why we talk about them a lot in Club Soda. So see them as soft, if it really helps you, see them as soft drinks designed for adults that are healthier for you, rather than seeing them as, I'm drinking them as much as I drank alcohol, and therefore I'm just replacing one addiction with another, which some people might say to you, which is, of course, utter bollocks, because there's no addictive element to those drinks at all. So guys, don't worry about them. They're absolutely fine.
Yeah, I want to add something to that, which is just actually just a thing to pay attention to. Is to notice how quickly you drink. Very often, actually, one of the reasons, particularly for people who are opportunistic or absent-minded drinkers, the kind of I drink because it's there kind of drinker. One of the reasons that becomes a real challenge for us is that we end up drinking really quickly, and because our bodies take time to process alcohol, we drink faster than we get drunk always. And by the time we realize we've had too much, we've actually still got a backlog of alcohol to process and we're in real trouble, right? So actually one of the things which I'd encourage you to do is to slow down. I saw the comment, somebody drinking a bottle and a half of Prosecco every evening. That is an enormous amount of quantity. Quantity of liquid. I mean, I'm amazed that you're not up peeing 3 times in the night. But I would just kind of like encourage you to slow down, to actually enjoy it as a drink, to notice the flavor, to notice the bubbles, to notice the experience. Pay attention to the experience of drinking it, and you will have a much richer and happier experience. It's really interesting. I have this conversation. So I do a weekly meditation and discussion group for people who are on our longer and more intensive courses, and this actually came up as a discussion last week. Somebody saying that they felt like they simply swapped the pattern of drinking, which was all alcohol, to a pattern of basically the same drinking, which was alcohol free. And we had precisely this conversation that I think there's probably a bit of a process to go through. The habit that you have of drinking alcohol, at the speed that you do, at the quantity that you do, isn't just about the alcohol. It's about everything else. Taking alcohol out of the equation actually then begins to show up all of the other habits, the bits of habits about your consumption of liquids that you want to change as well. So I think it can take a little while for us to notice, hang on, I'm drinking 8 alcohol-free beers in the evening. What on earth is going on? It's just important to notice that and go, actually, I'm going to have 1 beer and I'm going to enjoy it and drink it slowly. I might have another one later, but just to kind of let yourself relax into it.
And it may be that your usage of alcohol drinks has gone up because actually it fills some time in the evening, you're a bit bored, we're in a pandemic, all those things. And so, I spend more time at the moment, because we're at home so much, thinking about what I might drink in the evening. And what time I should really stop drinking tea. And if you think you've got a problem with Prosecco in the evenings, my quantity of tea in the day is quite staggering, everybody. But it's proper single estate loose leaf tea, so that's all right? Yeah.
It is all right,
yeah.
You're a connoisseur.
Yeah, so if you're a connoisseur, it's okay. That's what I used to tell myself when I was drinking alcohol.
I was going to say all of these bullshit things we tell ourselves about alcohol as well.
But I'm drinking more of that at the minute because I'm trying to cut out sugar. So my tea intake has gone up, and because I'm working at home and the kettle's there, and I've got my nice teapots, and the choice of tea was there when it wasn't there when we were in the office, if you see what I mean. So there are reasons why that's happened, but they're okay because it's not fundamentally doing me any harm. So I may well block the sink with all the tea leaves, but otherwise it's going to be fine.
And that's the thing, with alcohol-free drinks as well. We are living in extraordinary times right now. Life is so far from being normal, and if you're going to do one thing in the next week, find an opportunity to be kind to yourself. Don't give yourself a hard time if things aren't working out, or if you're noticing a thing about your behavior which is a bit off or a bit weird. The fact that you are basically functioning is a testament to human resilience. So be proud of yourself that you are keeping going, and find an opportunity to be kind to yourself this week.
Brilliant. Look, everybody, we're going to call that a day now. We've done 43 minutes. We'll be sharing this in the email. If you're not already on our email, then drop me a direct message or go on to joinclubsoda.com and sign up to our email there, or even just sign up to the free 3-day course and get our emails and a bit of a booster. And this video will be on there to repeat, and obviously you can watch again on here. I even managed to get rid of a spammer who was very persistent trying to sell us his cash loans or something. But anyway, all right, I will thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you, everyone. See you soon.